portfolio specialist here at Building Changes. I work under the practice and innovation team, and I have a host of other folks who are going to be presenting on our WOOF YYA RFP strategy for this upcoming session. So I'll have them introduce themselves when they come on the screen and whatnot. But we're going to be hearing from a handful of folks today. We are recording this, so for anyone who maybe misses a moment or anything like that, that'll be available. And if there's anyone who wasn't able to make it today, that recording will be shared. So just so you all know, that'll be available for later. Okay, so for our agenda today, we're going to be sharing our WOOF Youth and Young Adult strategy for this upcoming cohort. We're going to be sharing a little bit about who we are at Building Changes for those of you who may not yet be familiar with us and our work. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Washington Youth and Family Fund is, and then we're going to go over the details of this RFP, the general strategy, what it is that we're looking for. Talk about how we're going to be looking to evaluate that strategy for those folks who are selected for this process. And then at the end, we're going to have time for questions and answers. I presume there will be several from you all, so please feel free to use the chat during our presentation here and add those questions. We've got Building Changes staff monitoring that, and we'll be asking and answering some of those questions at the end. So in the meantime, we're going to just share a bunch of information, and you'll be able to hear some of the overall details of this RFP that we've put out already. But just know that we'll be answering those questions towards the end. So as I mentioned, I wanted to talk a little bit about who we are at Building Changes for those who may not already be familiar with our work. At Building Changes, we want to recognize that we work towards advocating for investments and policies in order to work towards changing some of the structural inequities that we see in our society and in our communities, and also changing the way in which some of the systems are operating towards continuously improving upon that structure that's already been built. We want to work towards building and creating some innovative strategies and processes that help promote homelessness prevention and long-term solutions for children, youth, and families in our communities. And we also work as conveners across systems and different partners who have a stake in addressing the needs of young people, children, and their families who are experiencing homelessness and housing instability across our state. So our work is focused on centering communities, shaping systems, and preventing homelessness. And it's in that value and mission that this WOOF project was centered in as well. I'd also like to take a moment to read our racial equity statement. So at Building Changes, we seek to hold ourselves accountable for addressing racism and discrimination. Black, Indigenous, and other people of color disproportionately experience homelessness due to historical and systemic racism. We cannot address homelessness without addressing racism at its roots and the trauma it continues to perpetuate. We set universal goals to end homelessness and pursue targeted solutions to achieve these goals. Our work in race equity does not stop there. We are also committed to building an internal culture that challenges racism within our own organization. So this isn't an expectation that we want to bring out. We also are working on that within our own team and amongst our own staff. And I want to say we'll speak more to this in a few moments, but this race equity statement also is really pertinent to the strategy in which we're rolling out here, and is definitely a huge part of the focus and an opportunity that the model that we are proposing can bring to you, the work that you all are already doing in your local communities. So real briefly, a little bit on the Washington Youth and Family Fund. It's through this fund that Building Changes awards grants, and through that grantee-grantor relationship, partnering with organizations and tribes across the state to advance innovative strategies that help youth and families move out of homelessness. It's that idea of innovation and creativity that really center a lot of the work that Building Changes has done with the WOOF programming. And Also, those same values are again like really heavily structured and centered in the model and opportunity where we'll be speaking to more in a little bit. With that, I am going to pass it over to my supervisor, Dimitri, and he's going to talk a little bit about some of the details of this funding opportunity that we're presenting on today.
Thanks, Julius. Hello, everyone. My name is Dimitri. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Director of Practice Innovation. A lot of appreciation for Julius and working on this body of work. Today, or I guess last week, we released funds for a project serving youth and young adults that total $1 million, in which case we're looking to grant to between 2 to 4 grantee partners to the tune of about $250,000 to $500,000 per grantee. This body of work will be for a 3-year funding cycle. It's going to be 3 years and some change depending on when we contract, but through 2029. And at Building Changes, we facilitate our funding through an annual lump sum disbursement, meaning we advance the funds that y'all need to accomplish your work for that year upfront, so you can do so. This funding is public and private. It comes from a public-private partnership, and so we can facilitate indirect costs to an extent, to a cap of 15%. And of course, we are interested in a lot of these costs to help you support the staffing and services and direct assistance for the young people that are hoping to get served within this strategy. And as a intermediary organization, we really help facilitate the requirements around reporting to make sure that we are in line with local and state and federal law with those funds. But we are also a capacity building and a technical assistance organization. And so where my old supervisors used to say we have a lot of flexibility and we really try and walk with our grantee partners to do what's right for them and their community. Expect us to be curious and in your business, because we also want to learn about how not only we can help these services and strategies fulfill themselves, but how these services and strategies help to change our system. So we will be in partnership with you. As named here, the eligible applicants for these are nonprofits. You can be community-wide or neighborhood-based organizations. You can be working on a regional or statewide basis on housing assistance. We also can award federally recognized tribes and local housing authorities and other public development authorities. There may be kind of statuses here that I'm not naming, that I'm not clear on, because there's so many different diverse options that we like to partner with. So if you have a question, if you're going to be eligible, your organization is eligible, please reach out to us, and we can make sure that we can get that clear for you before you apply. We are promoting and really emphasizing that culturally specific organizations that are led and staffed by persons of color or persons from the specific communities that the work is focused on are applying to these grants. We have, again, some limited capacity to support organizations that haven't been able to access a statewide grant. And we really think that it's important that the work that y'all are doing is honored in that way. And similarly, we'll also strive for geographic diversity across the state of Washington, knowing that the needs look different across our communities. And so that will be a consideration that we'll be taking into mind in our review process. Pass it back to Julius.
Thank you, Dimitri. So when pivoting now into like our strategy and the model in which we are proposing here through this RFP, it is really rooted in the concepts and philosophies of diversion as a practice for folks who are working in partnership with young people experiencing homelessness and or housing instability. And so I wanted to start today to make sure that we have some shared language and shared understanding of what that means and what that looks like, particularly within the context of homelessness and housing. As I know that the term diversion is used to set up models in multiple different systems and cross-sector partnerships. So when we're referring to diversion within this context, we're speaking really most specifically around exploratory and strength-based conversations that are rooted in the values and best practices that most of us are already being trained in regularly when we're working in this human service relationship and capacity. So what we are expecting and really wanting from the housing solutions and strategies where these funds are being applied should be rooted in that conversation coming from a thought partnership space and focusing on creativity, flexibility, and really leaning into the brainstorming process in thought partnership between that community service provider as well as the young person in which they are serving and supporting. The focus of these conversations is to remove immediate barriers to the young person's housing instability or housing opportunity, and to really help support them in generating creative ideas that leverage the strengths and tools and resources, knowledge and skills that young person is also bringing into that space. So really working to flatten that power dynamic and ensure that as community partners, we have our own personal and professional experiences, knowledges, capacity that we're bringing into that conversation, and honoring and respecting the opportunities and knowledge and tools that the young person is also bringing into that. It's through that a community mindset and thought partnership space where we see through diversion projects that have existed before, improvement in the outcomes for Black, Indigenous, as well as other people of color and or young people who are part of the members of the LGBTQIA2S+ communities, recognizing that they are often overrepresented and underserved by our homeless crisis response system, having that opportunity to really meet their community partners where they're at, valuing their experiences and what they're bringing into that conversation, have led, and the creativity in what a successful housing solution can look like. We've seen an improvement in the rate at which young people from those communities are experiencing homelessness. The reason in which we are really trying to lean into this diversion strategy in the way in which our that local providers are engaging young people is due to the way in which our homeless services have been structured for an extended period of time. You'll see this train track image that I've included on this slide. And that is so I can try to help illustrate a little bit about what we mean when we're talking about diversion and what it is that we're working to divert young people away from, is that the housing projects that exist within communities and have for a while now and have been the primary method for interacting with those housing projects has been through coordinated entry systems. And for those of us who have worked in or around those structures as they've been created, will know that those opportunities have been able to serve a lot of people and have been able to increase their housing stability and ultimately their livelihoods. And at the same time, a lot of young people have been left behind. So if we imagine these coordinated entry structure as these train tracks that are here going directly up the middle of this image, if you have 200, 300, 400 young people experiencing homelessness and that train track is their only way towards housing stability, you can imagine that traffic jam is going to develop really quickly. And a lot of those young people are not going to be able to access those resources or supports that they need. So through this practice of engaging young people at the beginning of the intervention and having these holistic conversations and being able to generate ideas to identify those potential train tracks that move off to the left, move off to the right, and those alternative pathways towards housing, not only immediately meet the needs of those young people specifically, but also creates more capacity for that coordinated entry system to serve the young people where that is the best and most opportune way for them to stabilize their housing. So we're working towards really trying to use this practice and this model to support the idea that young people shouldn't need to have a housing plan developed that matches a resource strictly because that's what's available to them at the time. But we want to work towards a community structure and a cultural mindset where young people's plans are able to have a resource match to that, and that is developed from their own ideas and needs and recognitions. And the idea of one-time financial assistance is where this project really kind of comes into fruition. So what we are proposing through this RFP is supporting a centralized diversion model. And so the grantees who are selected here what we're wanting them to help us develop and help us further is that we have community programs and not just a program in the community. That when a young person has already built trust and respect and rapport with their McKinney-Vento liaisons or their staff at their Black Community Center, or they're working in an employment readiness program, or their mental and behavioral health supports, or wherever that support is coming from, and wherever those conversations are happening, that funds are able to be moved so that the young person doesn't need to re-engage with a new system, retell their story to a stranger, simply so they can access a few hundred or perhaps a couple $1,000s that would then lead towards their housing stability and them furthering on in their lives. So it's that fabric that we're really trying to weave through this process. And our grantees will be the ones who are sitting in the center of this image that we see on the screen now in that fiscal administrator role. And so the expectation is that it's the community partners who are in these pink and red bubbles are the ones that are having those diversion conversations and meeting young people where they're at. And through the request process, asking for those funds to be removing those financial barriers for those creative housing plans. That's the role that our grantees will be playing, administering those funds to make sure that those barriers are removed quickly and efficiently so that young people don't have to experience homelessness any longer than they already have. With this being the way it is, and that recognition that I had named too, of wanting to help further a community culture shift, we also see our fiscal administrators playing a large leadership role in this space, not only around like diversion and what it means to ensure that like our local community partners have access to diversion and are trained in the way in which to effectively have those conversations, but also ensuring that like this model is seen and recognized throughout the community, and that diversion first is really held as a value. And working towards leading that effort at the community level. So engaging in other community spaces where conversations around reducing and affecting homelessness for youth and young adults are occurring to ensure that diversion can play that role and be a part of that larger process. So now that we've spoken a little bit about our model and kind of some of the values and the structure that we're trying to look for here, we want to take a little bit of time to talk about what does it mean for one of our grantees to be successful in leading this work in their community. So I'll start with some of our strategic objectives, and of course this is also outlined in the RFP. But first and foremost, engaging those local spaces where those community efforts to reduce and end homelessness are occurring, so that you can again be part of that larger conversation and be leaders in that work. Ensuring that culture shift that I named is part of the conversation at a community-wide level. First and foremost, like I mentioned, this project operates as like a payment structure and facilitating those payments to ensure that the young people in your community who can't, won't, or don't access that coordinated entry system have financial resources to ensure that their housing plans and their housing goals are able to be met. Ensuring that in this role, our grantees are establishing and sustaining an understanding of diversion at that local level by facilitating those trainings in order to ensure that your community partners are understanding and aware and adept at the practice of those diversion conversations, generating creative ideas, helping the young person flesh out a plan and ensure that for that longer term stability in the plan that they've identified themselves wanting to explore, and then supporting them in making that request to our grantees. But then also ensuring that there are community learning spaces where that we oftentimes refer to as learning circles, where those community partners who are submitting those requests and working with young people directly are able to engage with each other to better understand this diversion practice, diversion philosophy, and what it looks like in your community specifically. And finally, our other major objective of this is to establish that diversion-first community perspective so that it is seen and recognized that diversion is best practice for engaging young people and ensuring that we as community providers are doing our due diligence and our best work in order to know that young people are having their needs met the way in which they are recognizing them and by their own designs. With that, I'm going to now pass it over to my colleague Devin from our research and evaluation team, and he's going to talk a bit about some of the way evaluation and data elements of this program.
Hey everyone, my name is Devin O'Endris, he, him pronouns, and I'm the Senior Research Associate supporting Julius with this work. So we expect grantees to be responsible for collecting and reporting data that reflects program activity, housing outcomes, and participation in required program components. So some of these main outcomes that we're looking to report on include, but it's not limited to just these things, but it includes the number of households served, the number of unaccompanied minors served, the number and percentage of youth exiting into safe and stable housing, any demographic information on the youth who are participating, as well as the number of trainings offered, as well as the number of certified requesters. Some additional data elements may be requested if necessary to better understand trends and implementation challenges down the road. And within building changes, we have intake forms that collect a lot of this data. And then some of the other data will be pulled from the Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS. Next slide, Julius. So we also have some other data activities that are both quantitative as well as qualitative that will be expected from grantees. Some of these include 2 narratives reports that will be submitted throughout the year, fiscal administrator huddles where grantees can share any learnings, challenges with each other, and just be a space for us to collaborate and brainstorm together, as well as any client data that's entered by grantees in HMIS. And then the next slide kind of goes over some more information about what HMIS is, but to sum it up into a more simplified manner, it's a nationwide electronic database that's used by communities to track data on people experiencing homelessness, as well as the services they receive. It helps coordinate care, measure effectiveness, as well as identify gaps. And all this information is reported to the federal government. And grantees will primarily use HMIS for reporting client and household data. And if you don't already have access to HMIS, building changes can help facilitate that process with any grantees with the Department of Commerce if you need to get access to that.
Thank you, Devin. I'm now going to pass it over to my colleagues Mandy and Jackie, and they're going to talk a bit about some of the grant contracting and compliance components.
Thanks, Julius. Once awards are finalized, we move into contracting, which basically this is a stage that makes sure we're aligned on expectations, reporting, and compliance for the full 3-year grant cycle. I'll walk through what you can expect, and I can start with the first one, which is the financial risk assessment. Excuse me. We begin with a financial risk assessment, which is based on your organization type. We'll request core financial documents, which would include really your recent 990 audited statements and a year-to-date financials. This is a standard part of our due diligence, and it helps us understand how to best support you in the project. Mandy, you want to talk more on the grantee contact list?
Sure. So the contact list is just lets us know who in your organization we are reaching out to for what. Some people might be signing a contract and we really aren't talking with them other than that. Some people we're speaking with a lot more regularly on the financial side of things. Some people we're speaking with regularly on programmatic. Sometimes there's one person who's doing a lot of those things. So really it just helps us internally know who it is that we can go to for what. And then the contract documents, the grant budget and the scope of work are things that you'll be including in your application and then fleshing out throughout the process of that application, I believe. And then upon signing of contract, things will pretty well be solidified there. And that's something that you're working with more, getting support from Julius on, I believe, once the grant is up and running. In your contract, there will be a few other documents that we put together on our end, one of which outlines your reporting requirements, and really it's a schedule of financial reports as well as narrative reports that you'll be submitting to us. I believe quarterly the financial reports come in, and the narratives are, I'm looking at you, Dimitri, twice a year. And
That's
then, yeah, and we will also, once we set up our contract, we will identify a payment schedule and sort of just keep tabs on that on Jackie's end, on Julius's end, around just looking at how you're spending down the money on your quarterly financial reports that you send in, and that'll sort of indicate how we might be releasing funds moving forward in the cycle. And then you will have a monitoring site visit where members of the Building Changes team will be coming to your organization. I believe it's just one time through the cycle of your grant. And we work with a financial sort of monitoring consultant, Donovan. He'll come on the visit. Julius will be there. There might be another person as well. And that's really an opportunity for us to do some of that learning that Dimitri was talking about, in addition to the ongoing communication that you're having with Julius and the financial and narrative reports that we're getting from you. This monitoring site visit really helps us do a deep dive. We really want to know, how's it going? What's going on? And it's not a gotcha moment. It's not a like, ooh, make sure you dust all the shelves and, be on your best behavior in terms of finances or anything like that. It's really a how things are going, where you're at, what we can identify as potential risks for you so that we can help work with you to strengthen those areas, and sometimes learn from you as well. So that's kind of the sort of nuts and bolts of the contracting and compliance side of things. There are certainly compliance elements to it, but it's always sort of undergirded by the importance of our relationship and learning with and from each other for sort of continuous improvement of the programs.
We love continuous improvement. That's the name of the game. Thank you both so much for that. Before we get too much closer to our Q&A session, I wanted to share what our application timeline is looking like. So obviously we're kind of in the thick of holiday season, and a lot of folks are taking additional time off to be with friends and family and whatnot. So we took that into account when we were establishing this timeline. But we launched the RFP officially on the Monday before Thanksgiving a couple weeks ago. So we are looking for all applications to be due by Monday, January 12th. Again, making an extra week or so in there to account for time off and whatnot, coordinating with your teams at your organization. We will be reviewing those applications between the 13th and the 30th of January. And then we'll be making announcements about who's selected and who was unfortunately not selected by the 2nd of February for the first round. Anyone who makes it into that finalist round, that application process will occur between the 3rd and 9th of February. And then our final awards will be announced in March, with the expectation and hope that contracts will be in place by April of 2026. So as Dimitri said earlier, when we were talking about timeline, this contract will run through June of 2029. So it'll be 3 years plus if all things work out correctly as we expect them to. Then the contracts will be in place in April. So 3 years plus a couple extra months. We have a link here for how to apply for the funding. So I just wanted to kind of share where this is at on our website. Let's see if this will work. Oh. No. Okay. I'm going to pause for 1 second.
I could try and pull it up too, Julius, if you need me to.
Yeah, that'd be great. If you've got it, that'd be perfect.
Great. Great, everyone. So this is the Building Changes website, buildingchanges.org. If you go into Help Build Change right here, there is an option to apply to funding in these about the 7th tile. Click into that page and you'll come to a page of what we're currently funding. In addition to this youth and young adult strategy, we have a family strategy that just closed today. So what you'll do is actually select this top strategy, this top PDF, and it will take you to a PDF page with all the information on the request for proposal in that page. So we encourage folks to, go through and be really diligent in reading through everything you have here, especially if you have lingering questions after this FAQ. The submission instructions is a specific portion on that PDF, in which case we have a online application form link there. So when you're ready to apply, you'll enter into that online application link, and it'll bring you to this form assembly page where we have some pretty high-level information for your organization to submit. And then scrolling down, most importantly, we have a number of application questions that you'll have to refer back to the original RFP to prepare for. So the original RFP, if you go all the way down to page 14, it has the application form requirements. So even before, my recommendation, even before going to the online link, make sure you familiarize yourself with the original RFP in this page. And then that final page has the expectations for the narrative responses in the executive summary. So again, my recommendation, before you're submitting your online application, is to get familiar with these kind of straight up responses that you need to collect for your initial application, and then start to draft out your narrative questions using these. So that is the full, that reflects all of the application. Once you've submitted that on the online application form, and I'll click to it. So once you've completed all this, our inbox, the Washington Youth and Family Fund inbox, will be sent a receipt along with whoever submitted the application will be sent an application receipt. If you have any question on whether or not your application was properly submitted, you can reach out to us and we can figure that out for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dimitri.
Sure.
Okay.
I think this is still me.
Mm-hmm.
So we're almost there, folks. Thanks so much for bearing with us. We wanted to give you a sense of what the review process looks like. Again, WOOF is a publicly and privately funded body of work, and so we do take very seriously our approach to reviewing applications. As Julius mentioned, this application, we really tried to minimize the amount of work required for everyone interested by having a kind of two-phase application process. So we're really here thinking about this first phase. If you click again, Julius, we have an animation. Yeah, there you go. This first round application review. So this will be the broadest kind of solicitation for folks to apply. And this is our commitment to make sure that each application is reviewed by multiple reviewers per application. We have those standard questions that I mentioned from the RFP are matched with a standard scoring rubric, whereby we'll be entertaining all of our applications according to that scoring rubric that have some weights applied to them. You'll also read in the RFP, there is an appeal process for you to keep aware of during this process. So that's that first round review and how we'll go about structuring that within the timeline that Julius mentioned. Then, as we get into the February dates, we're going to be inviting back some folks to have submit a finalist application. So this will be a smaller contingent of folks that really demonstrated alignment with the strategy and doing a final cut through that smaller contingency. We don't know the size of it yet because we don't know how many applications we're going to get originally. And with that, we'll have some standard questions as well as some more specific questions that come up from your initial application process. And we'll be inviting on people and with lived experience and subject matter experts to help review those final applications, because the real importance there is actually we'll be kind of inviting organizations from that pool for this grant partnership. At times, we do conduct some follow-up interviews because sometimes it's a lot easier to just chat with these applicants around just different areas of the application that we want to know about. So when we get to that area, we'll really be in close communication and contact with you all to figure out if we wanted to set up a virtual time to talk. And finally, that resolves kind of our kind of procurement and grant making process. We then identify our grantee partners and initiate a contract process. And I just want to reiterate again, what we're looking for is we'll have about a 3-year funding relationship with between 2 to 4 organizations to allocate this total of $1 million. So and you'll see this in the application, our absolute cap for each grantee is going to be $500,000. So we have at least 2 partners to award to. It doesn't mean you need to cap out. And I know I mentioned earlier a range of $250K to $500,000. So if you're finding that you can do the work for below that $250K, your initial application opportunity is where you kind of demonstrate what you can do with the funding that you're really interested in. And so that is really our interest. And the reason why we do that is because we want to make sure that we have some peer organizations, that we're working with a few different organizations on this work so that we have some great peer learning that emerged. Oh, that's a great question. Thank you, Susan. So the $500,000 cap, Susan asked if this is total for all 3 years. Yeah, it's for all 3 years of the grant project. So you'll be, we'll ask the applicants are building projects with those full 3 years involved. A little side note is we do sometimes have grantees that because of the need and the level of work that they're doing that get through that grant contract faster than the 3 years. That's generally okay, but we'll ask from at least the ideation point for folks to take their best stab at what they need to get them through a full 3-year grant contract.
Excellent. So as I mentioned, we'll be posting this recording as well as a FAQ page sometime next week. But I know the chat's been going a little bit while we've been talking here, and I'm sure that some of you probably still have some additional questions that you may have held on to, but wanted to now open it up to some of that Q&A. Mandy and Jackie, I know you were going to keep an eye on some of those. Are there any particular questions jumping out that we want to address first?
Yeah, I wanted to pull up Samantha Jocelyn's first question. Could you review the financial administrator structure in more detail? How many community partners are we expected to have, and how are we expected to interact with them? Should we plan to search for and gain community partners if we're awarded? There's a couple of questions, so want to tackle maybe the first one?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. So, in terms of that, like community partner engagement, um, and I mean, I don't know. I think the scope and like in terms of like how many community partners you're like regularly working with and what that looks like, that's something that will likely be evaluated throughout the 3 years of the contract, and what is that engagement looking like and all the things. um I wouldn't say that we necessarily have like a particular idea in mind. I think that's also going to depend on the size and scope of your community and what that looks like. We would likely be looking more at like a percentage than a particular numerical value, given that if you work in a community like King County or Pierce County, there are a higher number of folks that are doing a lot of this work than if you work in a more rural county like Okanagan or something like that, right? So, in terms of like a strict numerical value, I think that's something that we're kind of hoping and interested in hearing from you all, and like what that can look like, given the community in which you're mostly operating. But there certainly would be an expectation for some degree of outreach, particularly as your organization is hosting and facilitating those training opportunities and local learning circle spaces, ensuring that community engagement piece is there. So, in terms of the like relationship of the fiscal administrator, um, I guess like a little bit more like clearly and succinctly, we know that there are going to probably be folks in your community who are more excited about this opportunity at the beginning, and some folks will maybe like come along as the project continues to grow and evolve and in the community, and that knowledge and awareness develops if it hasn't already. Because I know this isn't a new, this idea of diversion is not new. Like we're not rolling this out today. So um, as those local community support folks are engaging the young people in which they serve, they identify those housing plans, and in those housing plans, a financial barrier arises. So they will then submit a request to you all that will include the information you would need in order to measure eligibility and fidelity to the model, and ensuring that has been like that creative housing conversation is really the crux of this entire process. And so the strength of that and supporting them in having that conversation effectively and as effectively as they are able to with that young person in that given time and space. Once that request for funding to remove that financial barrier is submitted, you'll then screen that, communicate any questions that you might have with the requester, the person submitting that request, and work with your finance team to ensure that once that request is approved, that those dollars get where they need to go. If the payment is being made directly to a landlord or some other entity in the community, making sure that payment is made. And if the payment is going directly to the young person or someone else, like ensuring that connection is happening. If the organization is needing to use their credit card, whatever that looks like. So really working with a community partner and ensuring that fidelity to that diversion conversation that I spoke to, I know, albeit very briefly, at the beginning of our time today, has happened, and then ensuring that facilitating that payment and going there. To the point I made around engaging with other like localized efforts to reduce and end homelessness. I mean, that can occur in many different forms. Some of our communities are already engaged in the initiative of Communities for Functional Zero work, where that's already happening. The relationships to your local continuum of care or whatever other efforts to end homelessness for the youth and young adult population are occurring, ensuring that this project is able to support that work and is responsive to those local conversations on where best to fit a project like this that's as flexible as it is.
Thanks. That was a great question. But Samantha also had another question on top of that. These are related to the trainings. What trainings are expected? Are we hosting trainings for our community partners regarding diversion-first strategy? How can we learn enough about diversion-first to be effective teachers? And then they had a follow-up question for the fiscal administrator, and forgive me if I didn't get if you've already answered this, but could this funding be used to support creating a licensed home to house this population on the fiscal administrative structure?
Yeah, great. So to that last question, this funding is being used to support like the creative housing solutions and in those creative conversations that are already happening. So the funding itself is really used towards young people's particular strategies in exploring opportunities outside of the housing structure that already exists. It really is like fairly dynamic in that like as a young person is identified as experiencing housing instability, as that opportunity arises, and then as those requests come in, that's how that funding is applied to each young person's specific situation. And so not in developing like a particular house or facility or structure like that. We want these funds to really be able to respond to the needs and those relationships that are developing between the young people and their community providers. Can you please repeat, Jackie, that first part of that conversation just to make sure that I'm giving a proper answer?
Yeah, it's generally around the trainings, the
Oh,
expectation
right.
of the trainings.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So we have a train the trainer model. We have a training that in my role, I will be supporting whoever is selected as a grantee in at least having a baseline training that you can start with. High level, the training goes over the diversion philosophy and the values that are needed in order for local providers to really have the diversion conversation, which then is more so like the practice. And how not only are they engaging young people, but how are they supporting that idea of generating creative opportunities. And we have tools and resources and ideas and activities in that training that support that effort. And then the last part of the training is how those providers, once they are certified, are then able to interact with the program, how they submit requests, how they work with you all at your in that fiscal administrator role, and what that so that they understand what that relationship looks like. So there is a model that we'll be providing in our technical assistance in order to support that.
All right. The next question is the funding total for all 3 years or each year? I didn't see a reply from Dimitri or anyone else, so.
Yeah, I know. So Dimitri spoke to this a moment ago, but in that full funding total, whether in that scale of $250,000 to $500,000 would be the amount for the full 3-year cycle. So not an annual amount, but that would then be divided by 3 for each annual to determine that annual section.
Thank you. The next question, I see that Dimitri did reply, but would an organization who is not administratively set up to administer funding not be a good fit for this grant? And I see Dimitri's reply is we're really looking for organizations that can serve that administrative capacity and serve as a local representative for that approach in their work. In short, this might not be the best opportunity for an agency unsure of their capacity and skill set here. What is the cap of the indirect rate for this funding? I see that Dimitri replied it's 15% is our standard threshold. I'm trying to look for the next question, sorry. Could this be? Sorry, I'm looking for the next question. Another question, understanding that the funds will be used to support our community partners, does this mean these funds are not being used for our programs at all and is solely devoted to community support, or is it a mix? Some for clients in our care and some for clients in community partners' care.
Yeah, so I will say that if you are an organization that is providing direct services to youth and young adults, and your staff are having these housing conversations, members of your organization can also submit requests for funds, so long as those are still within that purview and context of the diversion conversation and diversion planning. But the project itself is really set up for anyone in the community who is working with young people and creating the opportunity to remove those financial barriers from those housing opportunities. So certainly your staff can benefit from that, but the uh, grant itself, any indirect costs will be towards like supporting that effort to make those payments on behalf of members of your community who are working directly with the young people, whether it be them of your organization or of other folks in the community.
I did see a message. Could this funding, this is from Ashley, could this funding be used to support free mental health services?
So for the utilization of funds for young people's plans, we are looking for payments that are going to remove immediate barriers towards their housing crises. So something like general, or more like general, like a using funds to create an opportunity to provide free mental health services wouldn't likely be within the purview of this project. But if a particular young person has like mental health needs and there are financial barriers to accessing that, and that removing those barriers is going to directly result within a housing solution, that's a thing that could happen on a case by case basis. But in terms of like program modeling, we are looking to utilize the client service dollars for this project towards like immediate housing barriers.
Great answer and great questions. So far, that's everything that's been posted. Oh, another one from Susan. If I am understanding correctly, when writing this RFP, we want to focus on establishing and promoting diversion as the hub for financial administrator, allowing our own program to access these funds.
So the we want to ensure that like anyone in the community who is working directly with young people and is able to submit a request for these funds. So yes, you'll be providing training opportunities and support to folks, whether they're within your organization and providing that direct service to young people, or whether they work elsewhere in your county region with young people, so that the young people that they're working with directly have access to dollars to remove barriers for housing solutions.
I see Michelle has a hand raised. Feel free to ask your question, Michelle.
Thanks, all. Sorry, I'm on my phone, so I couldn't type fast enough. My question is in regards to kind of the housing continuum, and in the dream state, where are the young people who are receiving access to these diversion funds along the continuum? Are we thinking anywhere along the continuum? So these could also be used for homelessness HP, eviction prevention style work, or where are we kind of maybe wanting to target along the continuum?
Yeah, excellent question. And thank you so much for the opportunity to clarify. So it would be, yes, it would be anywhere to answer your question. So if a young person's sleeping in their car, if a young person's staying in the shelter, if a young person is doubled up or couch surfing with friends and family, if they are in a housing solution where they're at risk of becoming homeless, so long as there has been that diversion conversation and there's a stable and secure plan that both the community support provider and the young person are feeling confident about going into it, and that plan has been like fleshed out and explored as part of that diversion conversation, then we would be able to support removing any financial barriers towards that housing stability plan.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome question. Susan, I see your hand up too.
Sometimes typing just doesn't work. So, hey, I'm in Mason County. I appreciate this. I actually just, can I just follow up on my question? If I love this concept, because I can tell you I've received several phone calls. Can you just help this young person? They just need 1 month's rent. What I heard, and I think I heard, is that you guys will help us set up some sort of system or model which would track that? Because like it's a whole new world. I get a phone call that says, "Hey, I need $500." So what was that look like? And what kind of requirements do we have to prove that that $500 did what it said it was supposed to be doing? So I'm assuming that's going to happen in the model.
Yes. So as Devin mentioned, this project will enter data and utilize and access the local homeless management information system, or HMIS. And for that referral process, we have a structure in place where after folks attend that training and they are like certified to submit requests with their local fiscal administrator, they can then there's a platform where they can submit those requests and those go directly to you with all the information that's needed in order to process the request and the payment. And so, yes, that's tracked and managed, and we have that data infrastructure in place. And Devin is our person who really helps support the bulk of that work.
Can I jump in here?
Go ahead.
Julius, because I see a lot of really good questions and we appreciate it. Susan, you put it so well, and it speaks to just how aware you are what's going on in your community. So again, just to emphasize what Julius is saying, like we are looking to fund the organization that really plays that role. Julius said we're trying to make a community program, not a program in the community. And so we really honor that there are organizations that are doing a lot of work, but they don't have access to the flexible assistance. So we're looking for someone that can help catalyze and incentivize that. So I just wanted to name that. It does not mean that your own organization cannot submit requests to the fund. However, there will be an expectation that those requests are looked at as neutrally and as fairly as other requests coming in throughout the community. I think the subtext around that is the role of the fiscal administrator is not to approve every request. Not every request for what these funds are for a housing solution for a young person is going to be a viable option, a viable diversion option. And so just as, you might receive requests from your own agency, from within your own agency or other partner organizations in the community, again, the role is actually to review these and see if they're going to get that young person into that stable housing option. So I just wanted to underscore that, there is a role on, again, kind of helping to champion and steward how diversion services are happening in a community. And in our experience, this has worked really well in other communities that have done this work. I think the final thing I'll say is there's a lot here Julius had mentioned the ultimate outcome. The way that we get to those services is also a really important partnership element here. We need folks who are willing to be at the table with training up their community in this intervention and supporting, as Julius mentioned, the continual improvement of attendance to the fidelity of diversion in their community as much as possible. Because we realize contexts are always changing, but you all really know how that's impacting your community. And so I wanted to say that will balance out this kind of like fiscal administrator role with the role of culture change and systems change that we're really thinking about. Sorry to interrupt, Julius.
No, I appreciate it. I do want to call out that it's currently 101, so anyone who has to leave or has a hard out, like definitely obviously respect that. And as I mentioned, we're going to be sharing this recording and a list of some of the other frequently asked questions. But I can say for myself that I am still available to hang on for a few more moments if folks did have some additional questions. You're muted, Jackie.
Sorry. There were two other questions that did pop up if you wanted to address them. Kristen, question, is there an expectation for turnaround time in issuing funds?
Yes. So as Dimitri mentioned, like we're basing this model off of some projects that we've seen work effectively in other communities as well. And so our expectation for that turnaround time is that payments are able to be made within a 72-hour window.
Thank you. And then I think I know Dimitri responded this in chat, but Samantha's last question, we have several programs within our organization that help with housing. If we wanted to primarily focus on using this funding to help with these internal programs that have funding lack while also managing some work with community partners, would that not be a good fit? I know Dimitri spoke more to that prior, but I didn't know if you wanted to add anything else.
So long as these diversion dollars that are available through this model are being used to remove like immediate housing barriers, then that would be an appropriate use of these funds. And again, even if they are being used by staff on your internal team, and as Dimitri just spoke to so eloquently, right? Like the expectation is also that engagement across the community with other organizations in cross-sector partnerships and those kinds of things are also being connected with and supported with the young people that they are also serving. So I'll just say that it can be so long as the ways in which these dollars are being used are removing those immediate financial barriers to a housing solution.
Awesome. I see Am's hand is up.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so I'm trying to make sure I understand. So the $250,000 to $500,000 total over 3 years includes operating the program, and also the diversion funding is within that, or is it is? Okay, that's helpful. And then there's an expectation that these dollars are going to be used to create infrastructure or like some sort of like a community response or a system to help the community better handle or like better support homeless youth and young adults. Is that right?
Yeah, so we see that the flexible funding that goes directly towards the housing solution barriers is what's creating that opportunity for that cultural shift where now we have a housing resource that's able to operate at a higher degree of flexibility than some of the more traditional housing programs we have. And so through that and in that natural relationship building and networking and relation that's happening through that referral process, as well as the expectation that there's at least some degree of engagement with larger community efforts to reduce and end homelessness for youth and young adults 12 through 24, that we are ensuring that relationship is part of that like community fabric that's being weaved.
Okay, that's really helpful. So, and then for like the ideal, like what you envision as a successful project, are you thinking that the successful applicant is going to be putting more time toward administering the program and creating this community response, or are you envisioning that a successful applicant is actually doing more community outreach and like one-on-one support?
One-on-one support with the community, like your like community partners.
Sorry, with like homeless youth.
So I think like for that's a really good question. So I think that for this grant, it's really more so the former, where it's supporting the people in your community. Now, again, like if your organization is also providing direct service, I think there's a lot of opportunity and benefit to that, especially as it comes to understanding and create and communicating the diversion model. So I don't think I think that support can come from either way, right? And I guess also like leaning a little bit on my experience working with other community organizations who have played this fiscal administrator role for other projects that we have supported as well. We see that in different communities, those organizations are coming from different perspectives. Like I've seen organizations doing this fiscal administrator work who are like a foundation. I've also seen it coming from nonprofit organizations who primarily support youth and young adults in addressing their homelessness and housing instability, as well as other community providers who've never actually done that direct service themselves as well. And so I think like it's to whatever skills and strengths that your organization has and how they see that they could really best fit this model in their community, and where that experience comes from in order to inform that process.
Okay, this is so helpful. And then do you have a goal for the percentage of the award that is actually used for like flex funds or diversion?
Um, Certainly, well, as Dimitri spoke to, like any like indirect costs, we have to cap at 15%. Um, there is some room for some additional like operating costs and things like that. I would encourage each of you to speak to your need as an organization in order to do this work effectively, and also recognizing that the goal is to get dollars out into the community for young people's housing needs. And so the degree to which you're able to prioritize as much as is possible for that goal and that effort, the program will certainly benefit from that. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate your questions.
Great questions. That seems to wrap up everything that's been posted on the chat. Thank you, Julius.
Yeah.
Oh, I see a hand. I didn't know if you want to take that.
Yeah, I think maybe, yeah, if Lily, if you want to ask your question, then we'll probably call it after that one.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
We got you.
All right. Um, so I was basically, it's a follow-up question a bit, to clarify. I was listening to the other questions first, so that's why I waited a bit to see if my answer came. So I just want to get this right. So if I'm understanding this correctly, the focus of this funding is to directly go into shoring up those community means of stabilizing youth directly. I mean, there's room for obviously, you know, making sure that you're effective at it, tracking and operations or whatever, but the intent is um, to shore up those places that intervene at that level of stability, of housing stability right now, correct? Or am I off?
Yes, it's to be able to make payments on behalf of young people who have worked with a community partner within or outside of your organization, to develop a stabilized housing plan and removing those financial barriers for those young people in your community. Again, whether their support person is coming from within your organization or from elsewhere in the community. And so, not using these dollars specifically for like direct service, like or like your own staff providing those direct service or having those conversations, but how are we creating a funding opportunity to remove the financial barriers for young people where a housing solution outside of the current homelessness structure, homeless support structure, exists.
Okay. So now, just for example, so we sort of run a kind of a pay it forward program, and it's kind of a workforce development and outreach program. And so, we outreach, find people who are experiencing these issues, and we bring them into um, transitional housing and job opportunities if they're capable. Otherwise, we refer them to other partners who are tailored to their specific needs, like if they want to go to treatment or if they want to go to, if different people have different things that they want to do. Um, and so, um, and so in that, our preference is to catch people before they lose their place. Like we have a lot of peer referrals where people are saying, "Hey, I'm losing my place in 25 days," or "Hey, I'm losing my place next week," even, and they need, direct assistance, like with their rent, and so um, I'm just wrapping my head around making sure that I'm not misinterpreting this, that this would be helpful to those kinds of emergent circumstances.
Yeah, so if a young person's not necessarily falling within a living situation that might be one of those more like active definitions of homelessness, that they're not like necessarily like sleeping outside or staying in a shelter or something to that effect, but are where like if there is no intervention, they are looking at homelessness, ensuring that just like given that that's their situation, they've had a conversation around planning for like what does this look like? What opportunities exist to stabilize this housing? Does that mean staying here and like removing arrears? Does it mean like exploring a potential other opportunity if this housing solution situation for you is not like viable or sustainable? If it is, then let's talk about it. If it's not, then let's talk about it. And anyway, at least having that exploratory conversation, it is certainly possible for young people where their homelessness definition falls under a more um, imminent risk of homelessness type of a definition, to be able to use diversion funds to stabilize their housing, because at that point their housing would be unstable.
Absolutely. Thank you. That helps me a lot because I was getting worried. I was like, well, a lot of what we do is diversion, right? Essentially we are a youth, program. And so a lot of what we do is diversion. We usually hear about it before it happens, right? Or while it's happening, I just got kicked out today, or my mom says I got to go by this week. That's when we primarily run into it. And so I was just making sure that this was a fit and that I wasn't stretching what I was hearing because I was like, wow, this is great. So sorry for taking your extra time. I
Oh
appreciate
no.
you. Um, and I'll be following along. I'm sure you hear from me some more.
Great. Yeah, no, thank you. And I appreciate your questions, right? Like any opportunity to clarify. I know there's a handful of details and only so much time to explain in this hour. So I appreciate the opportunity to clarify for sure.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a
Yeah.
great day.
Yeah, you too. Okay, so we will be posting our FAQ and this recording on our website sometime next week. So please feel free to look forward to that. If you have any questions in the meantime, you can reach out to wyff@buildingchanges.org. And that is our email inbox for this WOOF project. And so please feel free to shoot any additional questions there in the meantime. And we look forward to seeing applications start coming through. Just as a final reminder, our deadline for receiving applications is Monday, January 12th. So a little over a month from today.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good week.